At my brother Miles's promotion party, I spoke the truth about him. My father's face turned crimson, his hand swung, and everything went dark. He grabbed my hair and dragged me out of the ballroom. No one stopped him. My mother sipped her wine and smirked. My brother said, "You deserved it, Abby." I was a wreck, my hair tangled, blood in my mouth as I stepped out onto the street. But then a hand suddenly touched my arm, making me startle and turn. A stranger stood before me, his face marked with thick scars, but his eyes were unmistakably familiar, eyes that once made my parents tremble and shrink in fear. Before I continue the story, where are you watching this from? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe, so I can tell you the whole truth. My name is Abigail, 32 years old. I was born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts, in a family where everything was defined by the word success, but only for one person, my younger brother by 2 years, Miles. And me? I was the shadow on the sidelines, the child constantly compared, the one pushed out of the perfect picture my father, Thomas, always tried to construct. My family owned a long-standing real estate firm, built from the mud and sweat of post-war hardship by my grandfather, Walter. He always believed in the value of people over profit. But then, 10 years ago, he disappeared mysteriously, leaving the company in the hands of Thomas, a man who always deemed me weak, a dreamer, and lacking the business blood that Miles had. I once worked at that company for 2 years after college. I proposed more than 10 improvement ideas, from digitizing all property records to marketing campaigns focused on customer experience. But my father dismissed them all, calling them fanciful nonsense from someone who liked to burn money. I left, hurt, but with my pride intact. A year later, I saw Miles being widely praised in the industry press for implementing those exact same ideas. They called him a visionary, and me, still just the girl wasting her talent in marketing, and worse, someone dating a man deemed unworthy. I remember that day clearly, the extravagant promotion party for Miles, held at a 5-star hotel in downtown Boston. Beneath golden lights and affected laughter, my father raised his glass to toast Miles, then turned to me with a cold stare. "Abigail, if you choose an ordinary path, don't blame anyone for not having a seat at the table where real things happen." I fought back. I spoke out, in front of 86 guests, saying they were celebrating on the foundation of stolen ideas, and that my father's leadership was outdated, prioritizing profit over people. His face flushed red. In an instant, his hand swung. I heard the slap before I felt it. He grabbed my hair and dragged me out of the ballroom, while Miles stood there, clapping and laughing. "You deserved it, Abby." No one intervened. Not a single person. Violet, my mother, or more accurately, his accomplice, stood there sipping wine, smirking. As the door closed behind me, I turned back, my voice trembling but clear. If he were still alive, Walter would never have allowed this company to be run by someone who values profit over people. He always believed kindness held longer-lasting value than any profit. And if anyone remembers, he once said I was the only one in the family who understood that. Then I turned and walked away, leaving behind silent faces, and a storm they never saw coming. I wandered the cobbled streets of Boston, my heels hitting the pavement with heavy, deliberate steps. The September wind wasn't cold enough to numb my hands, but it was enough to unravel the years of suppressed rage in my chest. I walked past old buildings under scattered streetlights, casting flickers on my crumpled dress, stained from that humiliating pull. I didn't cry. There were no tears left. But then, a hand unexpectedly touched my arm, making me startle and turn. The light caught his face, a face I thought only lived in memory. But now, it was altered. One cheek drooped slightly, skin darkened, a long scar ran from forehead to temple. He stood there thinner, limping. But those eyes, they hadn't changed. It was my grandfather, Walter. "Abby, He called me by my childhood name, his voice raspy and soft as wind. I thought I was dreaming. I stepped back. You died 10 years ago. He simply nodded and motioned for me to follow. At an old cafe on Beacon Hill, I sat across from him. I whispered, "You're really alive?" He nodded, voice deep and coarse. "I'm sorry I couldn't come back sooner." I gripped the coffee cup before me. "Everyone said you had an accident, disappeared. No one looked for you." He stared out the window, gaze distant. "It wasn't an accident, Abby. It was attempted murder." My heart stopped. He turned to me slowly. "Your father, Thomas." I froze. "Why?" He sighed, then spoke slowly, each word heavy. "Because I told the family that I would leave the company to you." My eyes widened. "What?" "I saw how you cared for customers, your dedication, your kindness, what a real estate company truly needs. You didn't just care about numbers, but people, and I knew that's what this company needed most." I shook my head, unable to believe it. Thomas was angry, quiet, but I never thought he'd go that far. Until that trip to Maine. He paused, as if reliving it. "That day, I walked alone. A high cliff, strong winds. I was watching the sea when Thomas came. He said, 'You're ruining everything. You'll destroy this family for a girl who doesn't understand business.' Then he pushed me. I covered my mouth. Oh my God! I fell. Only waves and rocks. But a fisherman found me. I was in a coma. No memory. No name. Until 6 months ago, I woke up and began to remember piece by piece." I whispered, "And you've been watching all this?" He nodded. "I saw you being hit, discredited, erased, and I knew it was time to return." I looked at him, heart pounding. "What do we do now, Grandpa?" "We take it all back, not just for you, but for justice. You've lived 10 stolen years. It's time to reclaim them." And I knew, in that moment, I was no longer alone. That evening, we went to the small apartment he was temporarily renting in South Boston, a modest place, but clean and quiet, like the life he'd rebuilt from the ruins of memory. As I entered, he opened a drawer under an old wooden desk and pulled out a file wrapped in sealed plastic. He laid it before me. "This is a copy of the original will I signed before disappearing. My private attorney, someone Thomas didn't know about, kept a copy, and I contacted him after I woke." I carefully opened the folder. The paper was yellowed, but the ink was clear. Each trembling line stated, "Walter and Company Real Estate and all related assets shall be passed entirely to my granddaughter, Abigail Grace Bennett, the only person I trust with the humanitarian and ethical vision to maintain our family's legacy." I clenched my fists, heart pounding. "With this, what can we do?" He nodded. "We sue, not just for inheritance but for fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder." I looked at him, doubtful. "They have money, lawyers, connections. We need more than a will." He smiled. "That's why we need Claire." That name stunned me. Claire Martin, the best criminal attorney I knew, once my college friend, also the person I recommended to help a single mother escape her abusive husband. "Last time we spoke," she said, "if you ever need me, don't hesitate." I never called. Until today. I pulled out my phone, dialed. It rang. A familiar voice answered. "Abby? Claire, I need you, not for a stranger, for me, and for justice." Claire didn't ask more, just said, "I'm coming." I looked at Walter. "And who else?" He answered firmly, "Jack. Jack Malone, former homicide detective, now private. He's the only one who ever suspected my disappearance wasn't an accident. I met with him a few weeks ago." The next morning, we met Jack at a retro diner in the South End. The man in a leather jacket, graying hair, but eyes sharp as razors. "I'm not surprised you're alive, Walter, but now, what do you need from me?" I looked Jack straight in the eye. We need evidence, something that will hold up in court, and win over the public, so I'm not just the rebellious daughter anymore." Jack nodded. "I need access to company records, internal emails, audio recordings, and if we're lucky, some video." "What kind of video?" I asked. Jack smiled. "Like last night's party, where your old man dragged his daughter out in front of tuxedo-clad guests. Trust me, someone always records. And I'll find it." There we sat, the three of us, an old man betrayed, a disowned daughter, and an ex-cop who resigned for telling the truth. A strange team, but I'd never felt hope this vivid before. "Where do we begin?" I asked. Claire tilted her head, eyes icy. "By peeling off every mask they've worn these past 10 years, and when it's all exposed, we'll bring the truth into the light, legally and publicly." We started that same week. Claire went to the Boston courthouse to file a civil suit, demanding investigation into asset theft, document forgery, and domestic abuse. Simultaneously, she filed an emergency motion to freeze assets under Walter and Company's name, preventing Thomas from liquidating or moving funds. Meanwhile, Jack began his sweep. He contacted the hotel's management where Miles's promotion party was held. At first, they refused, citing guest privacy. But when Jack presented his private investigator license along with Claire's drafted data preservation order, they quietly granted access to one room, the ballroom on the 5th floor, that night. However, the main camera data was wiped clean. Jack frowned. Too fast. Someone cleaned house. I felt hope dimming, but then Jack smiled quietly. "There's another source. The guests." He combed through social media accounts, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, of partygoers, mostly business people, brokers, and some finance figures. After nearly 2 sleepless days, finally, a 13-second clip surfaced. Blurry interface, captioned, "Cringe drama at the Walter party," posted by a server's backup account, anonymous hashtag included. What stunned me was the image. Me, in a black dress stained with wine, being dragged by my hair by my father, under Miles's icy gaze, and a few guests shaking their heads. His voice yelling, "You don't have the right to insult your brother. Get out of this company, and out of this family." And me, still trying to speak through tears. "Walter would never forgive you. And neither will I." Claire froze the frame, her eyes cold as steel. "We've got it." The second piece of evidence came from within Walter and Company's office. Jack contacted a tech employee once fired during Miles's restructuring. Still bitter, he dug through deleted emails on an old server. We uncovered a thread between Thomas and Miles, discussing altering the heir's designation, using a fake board meeting memo to replace the original will. One email from Miles read, "Once that draft is filed with the notary, it's over. No one's digging up the original from Dad's era." Claire printed and sealed the thread. "This is willful forgery, and if tied to the original will, we have grounds for criminal charges." The final piece came from an unexpected place: internal company financials. Jack discovered strange transfers from the Strategic Development Fund to an offshore account under Miles Mitchell. Expense memo: media and personal branding costs. In plain terms, they used company money to boost Miles's image and erase me. That night, we sat around Walter's old desk. The file stack had thickened. Claire placed her hand on the folder spine, her voice resolute. "Violence, forgery, financial corruption. If needed, I'll file criminal charges, not just civil." I raised my head, no longer trembling. "Do it." They said I was the failure. Now I'll show them who truly destroyed this family's honor. And I knew. This battle had only just begun. Claire stared at the files in front of her, then looked up. "We could file the lawsuit now, but if that's all we do, they'll use their influence to drag the case out. We need something stronger. Public opinion." I nodded, slowly. You mean the media? Exactly, Claire said. We'll tell the story. Our way. Release the evidence, exclusive interviews, images from the party, contents of the will. When people see who the real victim is, their mask won't hold any more. Jack sat cross-legged, exhaling. I know a reporter. She once wrote an investigative series on a chain of nursing homes sued for abuse. Tough, fair, and can't be bought. I hesitated a beat. If we go public, they'll strike back. They won't hesitate to smear me. Claire looked straight at me. They'll do that with or without the media. But if we go first, we control the narrative. Walter, who'd been silent, opened his old leather briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope bound with a faded silk ribbon. There's one more thing. This is the original will. Handwritten, signed, notarized. My personal lawyer, Marvin Keegan, kept a copy for 10 years. When I woke up, Marvin gave it back to me along with all our correspondence, including handwritten letters I'd sent him, clearly stating my intention to leave the company and assets to my granddaughter. Claire opened each page. Her eyes slowly scanned every ink mark, every date. She didn't speak, but I knew. She was reading as if she had just found the most powerful weapon. Jack leaned over to look. The signature and notarization match the copy you gave us before. Walter nodded. It holds legal weight. Claire closed the document carefully and sealed it in a nylon envelope. We have everything. The original intent, financial evidence, abuse, and video. I clenched my hands. I want them to know what it feels like to be erased. I want all of Boston to know I'm not the outcast daughter. I was the one chosen. Claire stood up. I'll contact the reporter. We'll start with an exclusive article, and if needed, we'll go on TV. That night, I sat alone in Walter's old rented room, looking at the faded photos on the wall. I saw myself, the little girl he once walked through construction sites, taught how to read zoning maps, and said, building a house isn't just putting up walls, it's creating a place where people feel they belong. Now, I was fighting to reclaim that, not just for myself, but for the name he spent his life protecting. Just 3 days after the first article appeared in the Boston Times, the storm hit. First came the anonymous comments. Newly created accounts flooded the article with insinuations. Didn't she have psychiatric treatment before? Every time the family hosts something, she causes a scene. No one in the family confirms any of this. It's just her and her suddenly resurrected grandpa. Next came an exclusive interview, this time in a sensational tabloid, featuring quotes from a so-called anonymous family member of Abigail. They labeled me as delusional, with a history of refusing treatment and exploiting a senile old man for personal fame. I was speechless. Claire slammed the newspaper onto the table. This is a coordinated attack. They're building a fake psychological profile to destroy your credibility. Jack added tensely. I just checked. The original video posted by the waiter has been deleted, and a new version's circulating, edited. No scene of Thomas grabbing your hair. Instead, it shows you shouting, then cuts to someone saying, she's having one of her episodes again. I scoffed, bitter. They cut it to make me look like the troublemaker. At my own brother's party. Claire sat down, eyes hard. But they made one mistake. I looked at her. What mistake? We prepared for this counterattack from the start. She pulled out a hard drive. This is the full video, 43 minutes, recorded by a guest using a personal camcorder, sent to me after reading our article. It captures everything. Thomas yelling, grabbing your hair, Miles doing nothing. Every word, crystal clear. I trembled as I heard my voice again. Grandpa will never forgive you, and neither will I. Jack found more. A leaked internal email from Thomas's law office where they hired a media consultant to manage public perception, including notes that read, image direction, Portray Abigail as mentally unstable, emotionally volatile, with a history of workplace conflict. Claire printed that segment and pinned it to the front of the case file. If they want to play dirty, we'll respond with truth. Doubled. Walter said little that meeting, but when I looked over, I saw him trembling. Not from fear, but rage. I used to think Thomas was just ambitious, he said. I never imagined he'd twist the truth to the point of erasing his own humanity. I squeezed his hand. They once made me believe I was crazy. This time I won't let them steal my mind or my voice. That night, Claire released the full video online, along with excerpts from the original will, scans of the forged emails, and one headline: "Truth doesn't need embellishment, it just needs to be seen." The post received over 1 million views in 24 hours. And for the first time in my life, the comments under my name weren't judgment, they were outrage, directed at them. The investigative feature aired on Boston local news on Thursday night during primetime. The anchor was Jenna Reeves, the same journalist Jack had once mentioned, known for exposing a fraudulent chain of nursing homes. Her tone was sharp, but never sensational. She narrated my story with calm, clear language, like reading a public indictment. On screen flashed images of me being dragged by the hair at the party, the notarized original, will dated 10 years ago, screenshots of leaked internal emails, and most striking of all, a short interview with Walter. His face still bore the scar, but his voice did not waver. I was pushed off a cliff by my own son because I believed the company needed a leader, with heart, not just a calculating mind. And now I return, not to reclaim glory, but to correct the truth. Within 3 hours of the broadcast, the phone lines at Walter and Company crashed. Dozens of clients called, not to negotiate deals, but to cancel contracts. A key group of investors publicly announced a suspension of partnership until the company addressed the ethical and financial allegations. I sat on a worn sofa, phone in hand, watching as my name and Walter's topped the day's search results. But not with terms like delusional or unstable. Instead, with phrases like disinherited heir, hidden will, and Thomas Mitchell, violent CEO. Claire entered the room holding a document. The investigation has begun. Boston's financial office received a request from the court, special audit of Walter and Company's financial records from the past 5 years. Jack followed. I just received this from a former accounting employee. It's a set of internal reports. Expenses under Miles's name for lavish parties, first-class flights for his girlfriend, and offshore real estate investments, all disguised under the company's strategic operations budget. I asked, "Does it trace back to Thomas?" Jack nodded. "Every approval ends with his signature." Claire frowned. "We're looking at embezzlement charges. If we verify this, we move toward criminal prosecution." I didn't speak. I simply sat there, quietly staring through the window at the city lights. I once thought justice was something found only in books, but now I saw layers of dust lifting, corners of silence being lit. That night, I received an anonymous message. No name, just one line. "Be careful. They won't let go easily." I showed it to Jack. He glanced at it, then smirked. That's a good sign. When the guilty start to panic, they get dangerous, but also sloppy. I nodded. We don't stop. We can't. This is no longer just my story. It's a reckoning. Monday morning at Boston District Court. A light rain had been falling since dawn, casting a cold sheen over the marble steps. I entered through the main doors under the sharp gaze of reporters and the sound of flashing cameras. Beside me was Claire, composed like a warrior, and Walter, slow with his cane, but firm in spirit. The courtroom was packed. Across from us, Thomas sat flanked by Violet and Miles, dressed sharply as if for a board meeting. Thomas cast a glance my way, not of regret, but of restrained fury. Judge Avery, a stern woman in her 60s, banged her gavel and opened the hearing. Claire stood, her statement concise and piercing. Your Honor, my client, Abigail Bennett, is the rightful heir according to the original will authored and notarized by Walter Mitchell before his disappearance. The document is legally valid, with corroborating evidence from his personal attorney and the living testimony of Mr. Walter, present today. We also submit proof of signature forgery, asset theft, and video evidence of domestic abuse. Thomas's lawyer immediately objected, a graying man who stood stiffly. My client denies all allegations. Legally, Mr. Walter was declared missing. All submitted documents require verification before any legal conclusion can be made. Judge Avery turned to Walter. Can you confirm your identity and current health? Walter rose, slowly approached the stand, removed his glasses, and looked directly at the judge. I am Walter Mitchell. Social Security number 0-8-7-2-1. I was pushed into the sea by my son Thomas after I declared my intention to leave the company to my granddaughter Abigail. I survived thanks to a fisherman and spent nearly a decade without memory. I return now only because everything I built has been distorted by greed. Silence fell over the room, broken only by the clerk's faint tapping pen. Claire continued. We submit the full original will, leaked internal emails, evidence of financial misconduct, and the unedited video. We request that the court freeze company assets and grant temporary control of Walter and Company to Abigail Bennett during the investigation. Thomas leapt up, pointing at me. She's lying. This girl's been unstable for years. She had therapy. The court can't trust someone this delusional. Judge Avery slammed the gavel. Mr. Mitchell, sit down. Violet lowered her head. Miles wouldn't look up. Moments later, the judge gave her ruling. Based on the presented preliminary evidence and Mr. Walter Mitchell's legal presence, the court grants temporary control of Walter and Company and all related assets to Ms. Abigail Bennett, pending full trial proceedings. Furthermore, the court initiates a preliminary investigation into attempted murder against Mr. Thomas Mitchell based on live witness testimony. I didn't cry, but my hands clenched the chair, not from rage, but from relief. As we exited the courtroom, reporters surged forward. I said nothing, just looked into a camera and spoke one line. This is not a victory. It's the first step toward giving truth a voice. In the distance, I saw Thomas standing still on the courthouse steps, his gaze no longer fiery, but hollow. Violet clung to his arm, and Miles walked away first. 6 months later, the name, Abigail Bennett, was no longer a vague whisper buried in social media comments. It appeared formally on the evening news, in court filings, and in the public consciousness as a symbol of resolve, and of a truth once buried. The official trial began in mid-March. The air was still cold, but gone was the gray bleakness of that September morning when I was dragged from a family party. This time, I entered the courtroom as the plaintiff and the legal representative of Walter and Company, as granted in the provisional court order last month. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, former clients, and those once harmed by Thomas and Miles filled every seat. The air was thick with anticipation. Thomas sat silently, his face gaunt, hair grayer, his eyes emptied of anger, now hollow. Miles didn't show. According to Jack, he'd moved out of Boston, suspended all business activity. Violet also didn't appear, citing unstable health. Claire laid out the case in her steady voice, piece by piece, the notarized original will and testimony from attorney Marvin Keegan, the unedited party video showing Thomas's violent behavior, internal emails discussing forged shares and inheritance manipulation, misappropriated financial documents signed by both Thomas and Miles, and Walter's clear, coherent testimony Backed by a court-assigned psychiatrist confirming his mental fitness, the defense could barely respond. Their early efforts to discredit me as unstable collapsed when my psychological records were disclosed, proving I was of sound mind. Judge Avery delivered the verdict after 3 days of continuous trial. Her voice echoed through the courtroom. Based on testimonial, physical, financial evidence, and living witness account, the court finds defendant Thomas Mitchell guilty of attempted murder, pushing Walter Mitchell into the sea in 2014, and of asset misappropriation, falsification of legal documents for personal gain. Total sentence, 15 years imprisonment. She continued. The court recognizes Abigail Bennett as the sole legal heir to Walter and Company, the Westwood residence, and all government bonds included in the original will authored by Walter Mitchell. I didn't cry. But a wave of emotion surged, like breathing for the first time after years of suffocating in compressed silence. As I stepped outside the courthouse, Walter was waiting. He opened his coat and revealed an old photograph. Me, at 8 years old, standing next to the first construction site he ever took me to. "You kept your promise," he whispered. "You didn't give up." I took his hand. "And you saved me. Twice." I officially assumed control of Walter and Company in early April. The transfer documents were signed inside the company office, in a room my father once used as his fortress of power. But that day, there was no arrogance in the air, no pretense, just me, Claire, and a court legal witness. Miles had submitted his resignation by email. As for Thomas, he would never step foot here again. I walked into the executive office, a place I was once banned from, and opened every window. Light poured in, washing over old bookshelves, neglected files, and project proposals I once submitted, dismissed as whimsical. No more. I began by restructuring internally. I sent a company-wide notice. From now on, every department would receive direct access to customer feedback. No more managerial filters. I rebuilt the entire data system, digitized property records, and created a transparent dashboard, exactly what I'd proposed 4 years ago. A new media campaign launched. "We don't sell real estate, we build places where people belong." That slogan came from something Walter once told me as a child. In the first 2 months, returning customers tripled. Some former investors reached out saying, "We believe in those who dare to tell the truth, even when it hurts." And me? I didn't move into a downtown Boston penthouse, despite the board's offer. I moved in with Walter, into his old suburban home, the one with the red tile roof and lavender garden by the porch. Each morning, I brewed coffee, read the news with him, then drove to the city for work. Every evening, I came home to cook dinner, listening to him tell stories about old projects, youthful mistakes, and regrets of letting Thomas stray too far without stopping him. Sometimes I sat alone in the reading room, looking at photos of my parents, my brother, and the words that once broke me. I didn't feel anger anymore, but I hadn't forgotten. I simply chose not to let them define my worth another day. One Saturday night, Walter handed me an old wooden box. Inside were handwritten notes, technical manuals, sketches from his first project 40 years ago. At the bottom was a small slip of paper, written in pencil. "If you're reading this, it means I was right to believe in you." I couldn't say anything. I just held him tightly. In that moment, I knew what I was building wasn't just a business. It was a legacy, returned to the hands of someone who would truly protect it. I returned to the office on a Monday morning in early June, for the first time without feeling like I was stepping onto a battlefield. No more anonymous threats in my inbox, no more scrutinizing glances, no more whispers trailing behind my back. I walked straight to the meeting room, the one once used to exclude me from every decision, and hung a new photograph. Not of me, but of Walter, standing at an old construction site, holding a hard hat, eyes squinting from sunlight, smiling. Below it, a small plaque read, True value doesn't prove itself through power, but by how it endures after we are gone. That afternoon, I got a call. It was Marcus, the man I once loved, and let go because of family pressure and the judgment they passed on him. His voice was still gentle, asking if I'd like to take a walk by the river, like we used to. I said yes, not out of nostalgia, but because I knew I was finally steady enough to enter a relationship where I didn't have to perform just to be accepted. We met late that afternoon, on the cobbled path that curved along the Charles River, lined by soft green grass. Marcus didn't ask about the lawsuit, or Thomas, or Miles. He simply said, "I'm proud of you, not because you won, but because you didn't let yourself break." That night, I got home late. Walter was sitting on the porch, the small yellow lamp casting light over the book in his hands. He looked up and smiled when he saw me. "How was it?" he asked. "Peaceful," I said. "And for the first time, I don't feel the need to apologize for being different from them." He nodded. "Because you were never wrong for being yourself. What's wrong is letting others define your worth." I sat beside him, gazing at the lavender garden in bloom. A white butterfly drifted past, light as a whisper. I closed my eyes to feel the wind on my skin, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove anything to anyone. There's still a long road ahead. But this time, I hold the map. I received an email from Violet on a quiet Saturday morning. Just 2 lines. "Our family will have a small dinner this Sunday. It would be good if you could come." No name, no apology, no Abigail. Claire read the message and asked if I wanted to reply. I said, "I'll go." But not to reconcile, to end it. Sunday night, I arrived. The old family house looked the same: polished wooden floors, a soft fire in the hearth, a long dining table draped in a white cloth. Violet stood in the kitchen, wearing an apron, slicing apple pie. Thomas wasn't there, neither was Miles, just Violet, and a room filled with old furniture, arranged as if time had never moved forward. "Would you like something to drink?" she asked, not pausing her slicing. "No," I answered. "I came to talk." She looked up, her gaze like she was seeing a former student. "I know. Things went too far." I nodded. "And some things go so far they can never come back." She placed the plate down. "You can choose forgiveness. Family is still family." I looked her in the eyes. I used to believe that. But eventually I learned, not all who share your blood are your home. I don't resent you, but I owe you no more performances. She was quiet for a long moment, then exhaled. "So, this is the last time?" I nodded. "Yes." The last I stood up, didn't touch the pie. As I stepped out the door, I didn't look back. Not out of bitterness, but because I no longer needed any answers from them. That night, when I returned home, Walter was still awake. He was brewing tea, and the kitchen smelled of honey and mint. "You went and came back?" he asked. "And this time, it's final." I smiled. He nodded. "Good. Not everyone has the courage to say goodbye without hoping to be understood." I sat beside him, holding the warm cup. Outside, a breeze picked up, and I knew the final door to my past had closed, not with a lock, but with clarity. A month after I left Violet's house for the last time, I accepted an invitation to speak at a seminar at my old high school, the place where I once sat in the back row, always feeling like Miles's shadow. The theme was finding your voice in a world that doesn't want to hear you. I brought no slides, no presentation. I just stepped onto the stage, held the mic with both hands, and told part of my story. Not about the lawsuit, not about winning, but about the years I believed I was invisible, that nothing I did mattered unless my parents approved. I said, I used to think my worth depended on being chosen by others. Until I realized, real worth is when you dare to choose yourself, even if no one else stands with you. In the crowd, a girl in a purple hoodie quietly wiped her tears. And I knew. I didn't need a standing ovation. Just one person who saw themselves in that story was enough. From that moment, I began a small project called Second Voice, a scholarship and mentorship fund for young people dismissed by their own families, not to help them reclaim recognition from those who ignored them, but to help them build a new path, with their own hands and kindness. I used part of the government bonds Walter left me to open a small office next to Walter and Company. Every week, I spent one evening there, not as a director, but as someone once deemed a failure. And I listened. Some girls shared how they were excluded from family parties for choosing undignified majors. Some boys spoke of always being compared to their brothers, and how only after leaving home could they hold their heads up. And some just sat in silence, not knowing what to say, just like I once did. I didn't give them advice. I gave them proof. They were not alone. That afternoon, I came home early. The sun was soft, one of those rare Boston days where the wind wasn't cold and the light wasn't harsh. I walked past the backyard, where Walter had planted rows of lavender even before I was born. The soft purple blossoms swayed gently. Their scent brushed past like a quiet memory. He was sitting on the porch, holding a leather-bound book, the pillow behind his back slightly askew. I stepped over and adjusted it. He didn't say anything right away. We just sat there, watching the sun lean past the rooftops. "Do you have any regrets?" I asked. He thought for a moment, then shook his head. "Yes, but not about leaving the company to you. I only regret not being there when you needed me most." I took his hand, aged but warm. "You came back, and that's enough." He smiled gently. "Did you know? In my youth, I thought a person's greatest value was what they left behind after death counts." I looked at him. "And now? Now I believe the greatest value is what they managed to keep until the very end, no matter how many tried to take it." I said nothing, just rested my head on his shoulder. On the table before us were 2 cups of tea, one for him, one for me. No sugar, no ginger, just warm lavender tea, steeped from the very flowers in our garden. We stayed there until the last of the sunlight disappeared from the steps. There was nothing more to say. Because some things, once endured together, need no further affirmation. We had lived rightly, and for the first time in 10 years, I truly felt I belonged somewhere. That morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. Boston's sky was strangely clear, and I decided to do something I had long thought about. I took the elevator to the top floor, where a wide balcony overlooked the city. From up there, people looked like ants, towers scrambled for sunlight, but among all of it, I saw the first construction site Walter ever worked on, now transformed into a public park named in his honor, Walter Community Square. I opened the small box I brought with me. Inside were soil and a pouch of lavender seeds. I scattered them into the stone planter on the balcony, the one Walter once said, "If you're going to leave a mark, let it be something that can bloom." I didn't cry, but my heart softened, peacefully. I stepped into the director's office and retrieved the pen Walter used, a wooden shaft with a silver tip, and I signed the plan to launch a scholarship fund in his name. The Walter Foundation, for children once told they weren't good enough. I knew. This wasn't just to remember him. It was to preserve the best thing he ever taught me. That justice isn't just exposing the wrong. It's sowing the right. Long enough, deep enough, that it takes root. That night, I walked home, through the old neighborhood where my childhood footsteps once echoed, but this time, I didn't feel like a stranger anymore. I had reclaimed not just a business, but myself. My story may not resemble anyone else's, but if you've ever had your worth denied, been called too sensitive, not good enough, or the misfit of your own family, then maybe Somewhere, you'll see yourself in these pages. And if you're on the path of rising, reclaiming your voice, fighting for your own justice, I hope you know you don't have to walk it alone. Leave a comment below. Where are you reading this from? And if you believe someone out there needs to hear this story, share it with them. Not because they are weak, but because they deserve to see themselves in a story that isn't hidden. If you believe in journeys like these, of truth, of healing, of ordinary people who never gave up, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We'll keep telling stories, for you, and for those who've never been told.